It feels as if it's last night. It's election.
It does. It does.
But this morning, we are here to bring you the Special Electoral College. We call it the Super Delegates Conference of the NPP, and it is live here on your election headquarters. I'm here with Winston Amoah, and we've been bringing you the analysis, digging deep into the 10 aspirants, but also giving you the context, why we believe this isn't as significant in the big scheme of things for the NPP. But nonetheless, this morning, by close of day, 5 aspirants will have their presidential ambitions terminated, at least onto the next elections.
Exactly, Evans. I like the fact that you say at least until the next election, at least because if the NPP wins the 2024 elections, I am not sure they're going to have elections in 2027 or so, because then, as has been the norm, the incumbent president definitely gets to win. However, if they lose, then these persons whose career will be terminated at this point, at least for now, can come back again. The question is, who makes the top 5? Who would be able to fill, if I could put it that way, the remaining 2 places? Because we have said Kennedy Ejapong, Alan Tremanting, Dr. Bawumia will make it.
And that has been our prediction yesterday in terms of the top 3, in no particular order.
Exactly.
Right, in no particular order. So we're saying we're going to have Kennedy Ejapong, you're going to have Dr. Bawumia and Alan Tremanting definitely in the top 3. And then the rest of the 7 will have to share the remainder of the 2 slots.
Oh, but not the rest of the 7 per se, because as we get into the analysis, it would take some people out. They wouldn't share the rest of the 2. They would not be part of the rest of the 2. It becomes dicey if you want to. I don't think that my very good friend Kojopoku would make it. I'd be surprised if he makes it. Again, I always give the caveat that anything can happen in elections, but I don't think Kojopoku can make it. I don't think that's what you believe.
No, I think that you believe that he is.
No, he's not going to make it.
He's not going to make it.
No, he's not going to make it. So for him, we just cross him. You cross my uncle Kofi Kunedu-Apreku. I don't think he's going to make it too.
Okay, so you want to cross him out?
Yes, then I cross.
You also want to cross
my uncle Kofi Kunedu-Apreku out.
Okay.
So then it becomes,
in spite of the fact that he is, apart from Alan Tremanting, the most experienced at contesting in presidential primaries of the NPP. You're crossing him out still.
I tell you one thing. One of the things Dr. Kofi Kunedu-Apreku would do, and we'll get to him, one of the things he should have done was to take a break post-2007. I'll explain. In 2007, Dr. Kofi Kunedu-Apreku was the campaign director for Akufo-Addo. Now, when it happens like that, you've accepted to do what? To lead the party into victory. So in 2010, he doesn't contest. If you realize, in 2010, he wasn't part of those who contested. And it's understandable because you were the campaign director of Akufo-Addo. You took him into the 2008 elections. You don't turn around, okay? And one of the things if you speak to experienced persons like, Jay Kufuor, he will tell you that when you are choosing a campaign team, when you're choosing a campaign manager, don't choose a campaign manager who has presidential ambitions. So the moment you went, Kofi Kunedu-Apreku becomes a campaign manager, campaign director, post the election, he must stay away from wanting to become a president. That's my view. And so it was understandable when he didn't contest in 2010. But then he shows up in 2014 and he performs woefully. That again should have sent a signal to him that Dr. Kofi Kunedu-Apreku, maybe you have emerged at the wrong time. And yesterday, last night I made the point that there are very good candidates in there, okay? But they've emerged at the wrong time. And when you emerge at the wrong time, accept it and groom somebody else. Because whatever happens, you won't get it.
Well, and also the reason why we're saying this, and we're going to get into the numbers also for you, for Kunedu-Apreku, he's been contesting this for 4 times. This is his 4th time.
Yeah.
And the first time he showed up in 1998, he placed third with 52 votes and had just 2% of the votes. The second time he comes in 2007, he comes in again. If you look at the rest of the other guys here with him who were also on the list, he just managed 19 votes.
But he performed better than
Ejapong and Kwabena Ejapong, 10 and 9 respectively. And then the other time he also contested in 2014, he only manages in that particular elections for Kunedu-Apreku from 52, 19, and then ends up in last place.
Last place. He didn't actually make. You see, that's the problem.
In last place.
Because look, if you're saying you're getting 17 and placing 5th, you get less than that, and you're done.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. You see, Kofi Knudu at this stage, I'm sorry, but at this stage, Kofi Knudu should be one of the elders of the NPP who can advise and say, how about we do things this way? How about we do things that way? He should not be one of the persons who will be seeking to lead the NPP.
And the Joe Ghartey factor, this is his home region, and yet Ina tells us that he's not making as much of a strong showing in terms of talkability leading into today.
Yeah, he's not, and I mean, that's surprising, but of course it's to be expected. It's to be expected because Joe Ghartey is not a front runner in this election, and that's the reality. Joe Ghartey's had his own issues. Joe Ghartey's decided he's not going to be, going back to Parliament in 2024. You've seen people 2024. You've seen people showing up wanting to take his seat. It's not like it was in 2014, where at the time we had a lot of people talking.
And that's him, by the way.
Joe Ghartey.
That smart wall behind us, right there.
Showed up in 2014, got 22 votes, for instance, in the Super Delegates. Then he steps down. He withdraws from the race, even though he had made a top 5, and throws his support behind Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo. But unfortunately now, he's not really in the fray. The thing, however, is that he's going to be voting because he's a member of Parliament. And so he's going to be there. He's also from a constituency. He has a chairman. I don't know whether his chairman is going to vote for him or not. But by now, I expect Joe Ghartey to have been able to, for nothing at all, should have been able to speak to the delegates in the Western region. And so, other constituencies that are very close to his, for instance, the Sekondi constituency, Kwesimintim, Efia, as well as Takoradi. I know that the Western Regional Minister, who is the Member of Parliament for Takoradi, also supports Dr. Bawumia. I know that the Member of Parliament for Efia, Joseph Kujo, also supports Dr. Bawumia. I know that Andre Japamesa, who is Member of Parliament for Sekondi, also supports Dr. Bawumia. I do not know whether they've been able to convince their chairpersons, but if Joe Ghartey can actually do this, and he has a good showing in the Western region, if he's able to get, 1 or 2 more, he probably could do that trick. And talking about Joe Ghartey, in times where we've had these conversations, for instance, he's talked about how he cuts across. He's the candidate cuts across. He's going to tell you about how his father is actually from Winneba, okay? His mother is from Isikado, but the mother's father is from Osu. So he's telling you all his background. If he can get votes from all his cousins around the world, around the country, probably he could make the top 5.
But the reality is going to be tough for him.
It's going to be very tough for Joe Ghartey. I expect him to either make it or be very close to making it. But I'm not going to write him off, as I've written Kojo Poku and Kofi Knudu off. For Joe Ghartey, I think he can make it.
And also, to put it in perspective, he was possibly one of the first people I heard shortly after the 2020 elections on the radio station somewhere in the Western region declaring that he wants to run for president.
Yeah.
He was in there very, very early, laying down his ambitions for now. So he's had time to nurse this and to come back. As you see in 2014, he did this. What will happen if he doesn't make the top 5? And the question that will be constantly having to engage is that question. If you don't make the top 5, what do? Do you join that alliance that Boakye Jack talked about and back somebody in the top 5 going into November? And all of them will have to weigh up those options. And they have been meeting from all the conversations that we've heard, with the exception of Bawumia indeed. All the others have been meeting, trying to analyze and come to the conclusion, who do I back? Who do I form an alliance with if I am not in the race going to November? Even in November, if it goes into a runoff, what happens? And then after the conversation around establishment candidate versus non-establishment candidates, and that is how they're going to play the game if it comes price to us, that an hour and 30 minutes before polling starts, the only 2 agents you find are those of the man in our shot there behind us on our smart wall, the vice president.
I'm not surprised. You've indicated, for instance, that when you spoke to Samuel on Top Story, he says they're looking at winning 70% or more. The thing with the Dr. Bawumia team is that they see this as the momentum they need going into the main election in November. They believe that if they're able to win and win convincingly, win handsomely, it sends a certain signal. And that's why you may have heard the others also make the point, for instance, that it doesn't really matter. The thing with the NPP Super Delegates Congress is that we have only one trend. I mean, what happened in 2014, and that's Akufo-Addo. The situations may differ.
80% in the super delegates, 94% in the main primary.
I mean, so you have that particular situation, and you're asking yourself the simple question. So yesterday, for instance, post the evening analysis, there's some people who called me and said they wanted to talk to me. They're asking me what's really going to happen. So is it a case that whoever wins the super delegates is going to win the main Congress? And I say, I don't know. Because, I mean,
we just don't have enough historical
data
within the party to make that prediction.
Yeah. So I could just make reference to the Akufo-Addo victory, but then again, when it comes to election, it's not just about the quantitative data. There's also the qualitative information that you would add to it to be able to make that analysis and the story behind the story and say, have things changed? I mean, the kind of love Akufo-Addo had at the time, does Dr. Bawumia have the same love? Does he have the same control? But the most important thing is that, Evans, the Dr. Bawumia team, well-resourced, they mean business. And for them, even a 50% victory is a loss.
And it's important why that is the case. Because for him, he will win this. Many people have come to that conclusion, right? It is not about whether he wins this or not. It's about what margins he wins this by. And that is why this is absolutely important. He cannot get anything in the 60s. If he gets anything in the 60s, he is in trouble, right? Why? Because many have tagged him as the establishment candidate. I know Nana Akufo-Addo rejects that description that he's an establishment candidate. He says instead of establishment candidate, they would rather describe him as the front runner. But the fact is, he is the establishment candidate. He's the establishment candidate because he is the very embodiment of the establishment, of the party's executive arm. He is there. He has no choice. It's not fault of his that he is a vice president. And when he moves, he has to still move with all the state, I guess, resources at his disposal, right? And so he is that. And of course, and I say make this point, the president himself has publicly stated that I don't support anybody. But logically, their cloth have been tied together since 2008. If you're looking for somebody to perpetuate your legacy, who else are you going to find in these 10 people than your vice president to do that for you going forward? And so it's logical that you expect that the president will back him. And if the president is backing him, the president doesn't need to openly say, back him too. People will just toe that line, even if the president is not doing it directly. But we know there are presidential surrogates who will be going around urging people in the president's name to back him. And that is why, and again, we have the kinds of people voting today. They are his colleagues, right, who sit in cabinet, ministers, members of parliament, having to hear their acrimony going into this, the suggestion that members of parliament are being coerced to vote for him. And then we saw what happened in the Ashanti region when he walked into the stadium there. And he walked into there with close to 100 of the members of parliament, right, currently in the House. And that shows you what we are saying. Having to hear the story about regional executive meeting, that's the reason why the party 2 days ago that issued that notice to them, stop all meetings and retreats. Yesterday, we had a deputy general secretary in the studio in analysis talking about the reasons why they did that. Because regional executives had called for retreats. And the suggestion was these retreats were being held by regional executives who are members of the Special Electoral College who were backing him. And so he is the establishment candidate going into this. And that is why he cannot, among Special Electoral College voters who are mostly representatives of the establishment, get anything in the 60s. He needs to get the north of 70 and possibly aim to hit 80 so he can show to the rest of the field that I am the undisputed favorite, at least among these movers and shakers and the decision makers in the party.
Well, that's because, you see, and I was getting to the point that, you see, sometimes people buy pressure for themselves, like we say. This is, a race to reduce the number to 5.